Right, so currently tracking at some 80 kilometres south of Greece, the Freedom Flotilla vessel Madleen, set on a course to break the siege of Gaza with aid for the stricken Palestinian people, have run into an all too familiar problem for them: drones. Last month, of course, the far less high-profile attempt to get aid to Gaza ended just off the coast of Malta, as a drone strike left their vessel, the Conscience, at risk of sinking, with Malta widely seen to have allowed their airspace to have been used by Israel to launch said drone attack and stymie investigation and crew rescue attempts thereafter. Quite what Malta's deal was there is still not clear, their announcement of plans to recognise a Palestinian state at some point this month having been met with derision as a consequence. In and of itself, state recognition is meaningless without action to enforce it. But the drones this time are nothing to do with Malta. It seems they might be Greek. A drone harassing the Madleen had everyone on board ready to abandon ship last night, a drone which has since been alleged to be Greek in origin, and now two more at time of writing are harassing the vessel today, with Greece refusing to say whether they are operating them. But there are reasons to suspect Greece may be behind this on Israel's part, given recent conduct, and with Zionists crowing over the prospect of sinking Greta Thunberg, have Israel found another fall guy in their fight against people just trying to bring food and medicine to a stricken population. Right, so the Freedom Flotilla Coalition FFC vessel Madleen, British flagged, you might be interested to note, on a humanitarian mission to deliver aid to Gaza and break Israel's siege and its war of starvation on the captive population, is currently facing what appears to be escalating harassment from drones once again as it navigates international waters. The source of the single drone from last night has now apparently been confirmed to the crew as Greek in origin, and Greek authorities have thus far refused to identify who is operating the two drones currently tracking them at sea today. This aggressive surveillance and intimidation comes mere weeks after their other ship, Conscience, was similarly harassed and attacked by drone activity, disabled as it was, widely surmised to have been Israel behind it, sabotaging a humanitarian mission as that did. With the Madleen now having issued a distress signal following the appearance of the first drone overhead, followed by more drones today, and the discovery that the first one was Greek in origin, it seems reasonable that questions must be asked about Greek complicity where it comes to Israel then. The thus far complete inaction by the UK as well in ensuring the safety of this vessel, and the geopolitical calculus driving these violations of international law and humanitarian norms. The Madleen is carrying humanitarian aid to the besieged Gaza Strip. Therefore, the Freedom Flotilla's coalition mission is a moral one, it's an obvious one, it's rooted in solidarity and peaceful resistance, and the desperate need to provide support to civilians trapped under siege. Yet this ship, just like the last one, has become the target of drone surveillance again. Potential drone attack again is the fear. It's obviously the fear creating an atmosphere of intimidation and fear amongst the passengers and crew. So the message again from these drone operations is unmistakable, that human rights activists sailing to Gaza are not only unwelcome, but they're targets still. And all in violation of international laws, that is. But Israel don't care. When are they ever held to account for it? They keep getting away with it, don't they? So what is the Greek involvement all about then, Damo? What skin do they have in this game? Well, the appearance of Greek origin drones over the Madleen, particularly in international waters, raises immediate questions about Greece's role and responsibilities, doesn't it? When pressed to clarify who was operating the drones, the Greek authorities have refused to respond at the moment. Nothing like maintaining silence to convey innocence, is there? And the silence is deafening. The possibility that these drones were launched from Greek territory or Greek-controlled airspace suggests at least some level of coordination, or at the very least some level of complicity. So is there any grounds for this? Well, to a cynic like myself, there's no smoke without fire, and we might have a little bit of a blaze on our hands as it happens. Greece's recent political trajectory adds context to these possible actions on their part too. You see, Greece has developed increasingly close relations with Israel over the past decade, culminating in a series of defence, economic and diplomatic initiatives that align Greek policy quite closely with Israeli interests. But unless you've dug into it a little bit, you won't have heard anything about this in Western mainstream media, certainly. The first thing that flagged Greece up as a potential wrong-un with regards to Israel, really, that came to my notice certainly, came back in April, not all that long ago. You might recall that Netanyahu had been invited to visit one of his biggest fans at the time, the despot Viktor Orban in Hungary. Well, Hungary is a landlocked state surrounded by ICC signatory countries through whose airspace Netanyahu would have to travel through in order to reach Hungary. So did you ever wonder about the route he took, in which case? Well, here's an image of the flight data, and as you can see, it shows Netanyahu passed quite safely through Greece, North Macedonia and Serbia. This effectively enabled Netanyahu to circumvent international justice. The fact these 3 signatory states, including Greece, facilitated the travel of a wanted war criminal should have sparked an international outcry. Instead, it got hardly any notice. It passed with scant condemnation. People focused more about what Netanyahu and Orban were talking about rather than how exactly Netanyahu as a wanted war criminal actually reached Hungary. Perhaps you never even heard of this trip at all, reflecting perhaps how deeply strategic interests of supplanted human rights concerns of the mainstream media does live to serve them. But around the same time as that happened, as the Netanyahu travel controversy happened, Greece announced plans for a staggering €25 billion investment in defence over the next 12 years. It's like a Keir Starmer wet dream almost, isn't it? A cornerstone of this investment, though, is the development of a new air defence system modelled after Israel's Iron Dome and being dubbed the Shield of Achilles. Not a name I'd have picked. The Achilles heel here is that Greece working with Israel to deliver this, and we're onto them now. Israel is a key partner in this initiative, no less, as you can imagine they would be if they want an Iron Dome version for themselves. It's a lot of money to invest in a partnership that'll come at significant reputational cost, given that Israel's name brings any nation doing deals with them down these days. Though again, I doubt you will have heard about this. The staggering costs involved show this defence partnership is likely about a lot more than just defence, though. It's functional, it's going to be technological, they'll be strategic, they're close partners, they're close geographically. Such a colossal investment, though, given who in no small part it is with, will almost certainly come with some other expectations, though, in my mind. What else is being bought into here? It's an awful lot of money. The deployment or facilitation of drone harassment against humanitarian vessels in international waters needs to be viewed in a broader context, therefore. Is Greece acting at Israel's behest here? Or worse, are Greek drones actively enforcing an Israeli policy of blockade extension into the Mediterranean even? They're a lot closer to Malta than Israel is, aren't they? Could Greece have been involved in that first strike on the conscience? There's no investigation happening. It won't be allowed. The Greece-Israel relationship is not limited to defence either. The revival of another economic entity, the so-called 3+1 mechanism, is on the cards. It's been back in the news in the Mediterranean area in recent weeks, and this is an economic deal that links 3 capitals. This is the 3 in the title. That's Athens in Greece, Nicosia in Cyprus, and Jerusalem, which Israel obviously really want people to increasingly see as the Israeli capital, with one other nation not in the immediate region, hence it being referred to as the +1, that being Washington, of course. No surprise there. Ostensibly, though, this is an alliance focusing on energy and trade. One of its key goals is to bypass Turkey and Russia in the east-west energy corridor, using Israel as a linchpin in connecting Indian and European energy markets. The strategic nature of this mechanism was heavily promoted by the Trump administration and continues to enjoy a lot of bipartisan support in Washington. However, these kinds of alliances have in the past often prioritised state and regional interests over human rights and humanitarian law. As a result, missions like that of the Madleen, which challenged the blockade of Gaza, are perceived as threats, not because they carry weapons or engage in violence, but because they carry the moral force of dissent. Here's an excerpt on this 3+1 mechanism showing how it benefits US and Israeli interests from the US right-wing think tank the Middle East Forum, who, given what we're observing with the Madleen, might have said the quiet part out loud. A formalised 3+1 alliance will counter malign influences more effectively. Turkey, under President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, has emerged as a disruptor, supporting extremist groups from Syria to Libya, threatening maritime boundaries, manipulating migration flows, and harbouring Hamas leadership. The threat from Turkey will persist even after Erdogan eventually departs. Russia continues to expand its regional footprint, while Iran projects power through proxies like Hezbollah. The 3+1 nations have already demonstrated effectiveness by intercepting terror plots and enhancing maritime security, but ad hoc cooperation proves insufficient against systemic challenges. No hiding whose side is on whose there, it seems, not least of all Greece. The Madleen is a British-flagged vessel, and as I mentioned previously, so under international maritime law, this grants the vessel certain protections and imposes responsibilities on us here in the United Kingdom towards them. And we saw the registration of the last vessel, the Conscience, pulled right after they set sail, actually, last time, which stripped them of said protections. That time, the ship was registered in Palau. But the Madleen is different in that regard this time, British flagged. So the harassment of a British vessel, de facto British vessel, by drones of foreign origin, especially in international waters, really should be provoking a strong diplomatic and defensive response, yet the UK has not as yet said or done anything. Adding further complexity is the presence of a UK military airbase in Cyprus, which you'll all be aware of by now, RAF Akrotiri, which, should the Madleen get that far, will be passing close by to Cyprus, and which is reportedly being used to conduct surveillance flights for Israel. While the UK monitors the Middle East from this base, it could be offering support for the Madleen in light of these drones as well. Yes, so while the UK government says nothing, there's actually no excuse that they do nothing, even with Cyprus being involved in this 3+1 mechanism. The drone harassment is not the only threat facing the Madleen, though. There are, of course, all of the pro-Israel state actors, the commentators and the activists online who have been actively calling for the destruction of the ship and even the deaths of its high-profile passengers, notably the environmental activist Greta Thunberg, who comes in for a lot of unwarranted hate. These death wishes are not empty rhetoric. They reflect a broader climate of incitement that enables and justifies state and non-state aggression. And when they come even from politicians, for example, South Carolina's rancid Senator Lindsey Graham, saying, "I hope Greta and her friends can swim," it carries a lot of weight, not unlike Graham himself. Then there has been the supposed human rights lawyer, but more of a Zionist propagandist, Arsen Ostrovsky, who tweeted out that, "Oh look, the little jihadi Greta Thunberg is trying to get into Gaza to show solidarity with Hamas. It would be so sad if something were to happen to her flotilla." Nothing threatening about that at all, of course, and there's lots more like that besides. By getting away with what they are saying, though, they raise concerns about the normalisation of threats against humanitarian missions where it comes to Gaza. That such calls for violence circulate openly online without serious consequence reflects a dangerous erosion of what is deemed acceptable discourse. Human rights defenders, aid workers and journalists are increasingly targeted for their work. And the lack of accountability for people making such disturbingly genocidal comments is emboldening the perpetrators. At the heart of this issue is the urgent need for transparency and accountability. Greece must disclose who is operating the drones over the Madleen and under whose authority, because if the two today are not them, then who is it? The UK really should be fulfilling its obligations to protect its flagged vessels too. And the international community must reassert that humanitarian missions, especially those carried out peacefully and in accordance with international law, are not legitimate targets of military or quasi-military action. The targeting of the Madleen is shining a much bigger light than the conscience did of a broader crisis in international affairs. The weaponization of technology against human rights, as we're seeing here, the subordination of humanitarian law to strategic alliances, the laws we're all signatories of being set aside in favour of regional ties, and the deafening silence of supposed defenders of democracy. The Freedom Flotilla's mission is a test not only of humanitarian commitment, but of international law itself, which is being eroded more and more the more Israel is seen to be getting away with flouting it, along with other nations happy to do so in Israeli interests too. When a British vessel carrying food and medicine can be harassed by drones from a supposed ally for Israel, as we suspect this to be, with no consequences at all, what does that say about the integrity of the international order and international law? The situation demands immediate attention. Greece needs to be held accountable for the drones that are allegedly originating from its territory. The UK must explain its inaction, and we need to make a noise about that, draw attention to it, because otherwise we're complicit in our silence too. The Madleen may be a single vessel, but it carries with it the weight of international conscience, and that makes it powerful and dangerous to those who fear truth more than they fear weapons. This is not just a maritime issue, it's a test of who we are as a global community. Will we stand for those who sail for justice, or will we let them be silenced by drones in the sky and cowards on the ground? I know which side I'm on. For more on this latest mission by the Freedom Flotilla, and to track their progress, actually, frankly, looking out for them, just doing that is as well, please do check out this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, sort of spreading the word and helping to support the channel at the very same time, which is much appreciated, holding power to account for ordinary working class people, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers folks.